LeBron James glared into the camera, the arena lights glinting off his championship rings. He'd been labeled a bully by Charles Barkley on national radio, no less. That hit him hard. On a live broadcast, LeBron leaned in, voice calm but firm. "A bully? That's your narrative, not mine." He paused. The silence spoke volumes. He named examples moments when he spoke up for teammates, when he defended others under fire. None were violence or intimidation. They were ownership, strength, leadership, later on ESPN. Stephen A. Smith joined the debate. LeBron isn't bullying, he's demanding respect. His tone cut through the skepticism. He challenged Barkley's claim, pointing out the difference between confidence and cruelty. LeBron's camp got the memo. He didn't shout. Kay clarified. Meanwhile, Barkley doubled down, calling both LeBron and Stephen A. lame and weak. He said it sounded more like control than caring. That turned heads. But LeBron, he didn't escalate. He didn't mock. If spake with authority, if speaking up for your family is bullying, that's a conversation we need to have, Stephen A. added. He's defending values, not just ego. Online, fans flooded comment threads. Grateful they were seeing LeBron as more than a star, someone defining his legacy. Others defended Chuck sports veterans earning their voice, and as social media blew up #LA, BRON, not ABUL, lie trending. LeBron didn't post another clapback. He just dropped a final line over footage of him hugging a teammate. "I stand by my words. I stand by my actions." That's leadership. The debate didn't just survive, it shifted. Challengers were forced to define their terms. Barkley had fired. A test. LeBron answered not with heat, but clarity. Stephen A. amplified. That's a legacy move. The next morning. The headlines hadn't cooled, they'd multiplied. LeBron responds to Barkley's bully label with poise. Stephen A. defends LeBron in heated ESPN debate. Barkley triples down. He can't take criticism. The story wasn't just a feud anymore. It had become a generational standoff. Sports radio lit up coast to coast. Callers took sides. Old school fans echoed Chuck. LeBron's too sensitive. Younger ones pushed back. You call it soft, we call it self-respect. On first take, Stephen A. arrived in full storm mode. He didn't wait for questions. "Let me be real clear," Kay said, tapping the desk. "LeBron James isn't a bully. Kay, he's a grown man demanding accountability in a world that keeps trying to gaslight him for speaking up." The segment went viral before it ended. He wasn't defending a player. He was defining a principle. Back in the locker room, LeBron wasn't rattled. Knew the game on and off the court. He'd seen Barkley call players out before. But this felt different, personal, and still he refused to retaliate with heat. That night, he posted one sentence on his Instagram story. "You can't lead in silence." No tags, no mentions, just message. Charles Barkley wasn't done either. He went on a late-night radio show and said, "LeBron's too sensitive to criticism. You can't run the NBA and cry when someone claps back." But the tone had shifted. The public wasn't buying the soft label anymore. Because LeBron never cried. He calculated, he clarified. He led Stephen A. double down in an interview. The next day, "I'd rather have a bully like LeBron stands up for something than a legend who still thinks calling people out of their name is leadership." The shot landed. In silence. LeBron showed up to his next game, dropped 38 points, 11 rebounds, and walked off the court with the same stare he had when the cameras caught his first clapback. Not angry, not shaken, unmoved. Because when a king speaks once is enough, the pressure hit Charles Barkley. Faster than he expected. The usual crowd that cheered him on for telling it like it is suddenly hesitated. Analysts who once nodded in agreement now shifted uncomfortably when his name came up. A few even went live and said what fans had already started posting. Chuck took it too far. You don't throw the word bully at someone who's mentored half the league. Inside ESPN's studio, Stephen A. addressed the backlash directly. Let's not pretend we don't know what bully means in this context. He said, because LeBron's never laid hands on anyone. What he does is hold power, and some people still get uncomfortable when a black man uses his voice with power. The line sent shockwaves. Meanwhile, NBA players began quietly responding. A veteran guard tweeted, "If standing up for your team is bullying, call me one too." Another younger player dropped an Instagram story of him and LeBron laughing during practice with the caption, "We know the truth." But the biggest surprise came when Dwyane Wade reposted the original Barkley clip and added, "This why we protect our own. Some of y'all only love us when we're silent." Now, it wasn't just media versus lub, BRON. It was the league remembering who they actually ride with. Barkley sensed the heat. He appeared the next evening on TNT face, tight energy, different. No jokes, no big swings. "I said what I said," he muttered. "But maybe, I could have used different words." Shaq, seated next to him, didn't laugh. He just looked over and said, "That's why we stay out of feelings when it's facts." Bron ain't no bully. That clip trended by sunrise. LeBron, still no interview, no tweet storm, no live session, just a post-game press conference after another W when a reporter asked about Barkley's walkback. LeBron simply smiled. "Accountability," he said. "It's contagious." Then he stood, nodded at the room, and left, no mic. Drop needed, because the court had always been his reply. The sponsors moved quietly, not with statements, not with headlines, just subtle repositioning. One major sports brand that had worked with both men reposted. LeBron's quote, "Accountability is contagious across all platforms." No tags, no Barkley. Another brand long associated with TNT paused a Barkley-led campaign set to air during playoff season. No cancellation notice, just ... shelved. Because even when you're a legend, the room shifts when the audience starts clapping for someone else. Online. The fans took over. Memes flooded the timeline. LeBron, sitting calmly with the words, "bully." That's leadership. Fan edits compared Barkley's "you're too sensitive" clips with LeBron's off-court work. School openings. Housing projects. Menteosis. The contrast wasn't subtle. Comment sections turned into archives. This man gave entire neighborhoods hope? And you call that a bully? Chuck's playing the old game. LeBron changed the whole playbook. Even non-sports accounts picked it up. Activists, teachers, parents, because this was no longer about basketball. It was about voice. And who gets punished for using it? A viral TikTok from a high school debate coach stitched Barkley's comments with LeBron's quote and said, "This is how power is reframed when it makes the wrong people uncomfortable." Within a week, the energy had changed completely. LeBron didn't win a feud. He won the narrative. He made it clear he didn't need to scream. He didn't need to insult. He led with tone, not volume, and Barkley. He went back to his usual antics. On TNT, but something was different. The laughter didn't land the same. The panel didn't clap the same. He'd crossed a line, and now, even in his own arena, the echo of that word bully followed him in shadows. And as for LeBron, he posted one final image to his story, a crown. No caption, because when they try to strip your legacy with one word, you let the truth wear the crown for you. The full circle moment didn't happen in a press conference or on a podcast. It happened courtside, a week after the feud hit its peak. LeBron showed up to a Lakers home game wearing a black hoodie with one word printed in small, clean font across the chest, loud, no brand, no quote, just that word, deliberate, calculated, ironic, and undeniable. The cameras caught it instantly. Clips of him walking into the tunnel circulated within minutes. Commentators tried to keep it professional, but even they couldn't ignore the message. He wasn't just walking into the building, he was walking straight through the narrative. Barkley tried to lock him in by halftime. The hoodie was trending. By the next morning, it had been remade into fan merch. By the end of the week, schools, coaches, and nonprofits were reposting the image with new captions. Be loud in your values. Leadership is loud. Silence never saved anyone. Barkley didn't mention the hoodie on TNT. He didn't need to, because everyone already understood what it meant. The final twist came during a charity gala. LeBron took the stage to present an award, nothing controversial, nothing dramatic, just community, legacy, impact. But during his speech, he paused, looked across the audience and said, "Some people call it noise. I call it responsibility. I never asked to be the loudest in the room. I just kept handing me the mic." The room went quiet and then it erupted. Not because it was a clapback, because it was truth clear, composed, and unmistakably earned. Charles Barkley watched the moment on replay the next day. He didn't comment, he just turned off the screen. He leaned back in his chair and whispered something under his breath. "I gave him the mic, didn't I?" "Yes, Chuck, you did." And he never dropped it. Weeks later, the moment had crystallized into something bigger than a viral clip or trending topic. It had become cultural shorthand. Every time someone stood firm in a moment of criticism, especially in the sports world, you could hear it whispered on social media. LeBron didn't flinch. He didn't need a documentary. He didn't need a YouTube tell-all or a PR team to reframe the conversation. He just stayed still long enough for the truth to catch up. And it did. Fast. Sports talk shows evolved. Barkley still joked, still barked. But there was a shadow now. A boundary. Something behind the eyes of everyone at the table that said, "We know how far is too far now." Not because he was canceled, not because he was silenced, but because for the first time in years, he got outplayed, not on the court. In tone, in leadership. In timing. Stephen A. Smith, weeks later, said it best in an unplanned moment on First Take. What we saw wasn't just LeBron responding to disrespect. What we saw was a man protecting his legacy without losing his integrity. You can talk tough all day, but poise lasts forever. That clip was shared more than any segment that week. And LeBron, he went back to work, practice, games, community. He didn't dwell. He didn't circle back, but fans kept the record. Straight memes changed tone from defense to honor. Say what you want. He built schools. Call him loud, but call him present. He doesn't play the old game. He leads a new one. Young athletes quoted him in pressers. Coaches referenced him in pregame talks. And in one quiet moment, at an elementary school, built under his foundation, a young boy was asked during a reading exercise, "Who's your hero?" He paused, then smiled. "LeBron." "Why?" the teacher asked. The boy shrugged. Because he never let people call him something he's not. That clip made it to LeBron's team. One of his assistants showed it to him after a late game. LeBron watched it in silence. Smiled. Nodded. Then whispered, "That's why we do this." The moment came behind closed doors, off camera, off script. But not off the record. Stephen A. Smith and Charles Barkley found themselves in the same green room before a charity roundtable. Not for ESPN, not for TNT, just something corporate. Event neither of them could skip. Stephen A. didn't speak first. He waited, arms crossed, watching Chuck sip from a paper cup like nothing had happened. "You know you crossed the line," Stephen A. finally said. Barkley shrugged. "I said what I felt. That's my job." Stephen A. didn't blink. "Oh, Chuck, your job is to speak truth, not make a show out of another man's name." That landed, because even Barkley knew it. He had turned the volume up too far. And now the feedback had scorched the mic. Chuck leaned back. "I didn't think it would hit that hard." Stephen A. sat forward. "Because you're not used to people calling you out with facts. You're used to noise. LeBron doesn't do noise. He does legacy." There was a long pause. Then Barkley muttered, "He's got the league behind him now." Stephen A. looked him dead in the eye. He earned that. Every inch of it. Chuck didn't argue because he knew Steven A. wasn't talking about points or rings. He was talking about restraint, leadership, timing, and Barkley. For all his bravado, knew he'd made one crucial mistake. He challenged a man who didn't need to respond to win. He challenged a man who had already outgrown the arena where Charles made his name. Back on the court, LeBron was wrapping up practice when a young journalist asked him how he felt about the way things settled. He smiled. Settled. For who? She looked confused. I'm just saying, he added, lacing his sneakers. Some people think a clapback is the end of the conversation. I think it's just where the listening starts. Then he stood, grabbed his towel, and walked off, not in a rush, not for show. Just with the ease of someone who understood the weight of legacy and had already decided to carry it without flinching. All-Star Weekend arrived like it always did. Bright lights, big stages, egos polished to perfection. But this year, the tension was different. Not everyone said it out loud, but everyone felt it. There were whispers in the tunnels, nervous energy in the suites. Because for the first time in years, Charles Barkley and LeBron James would share a stage. The TNT crew was broadcasting live from center court. Players filtered through, smiling, laughing, posing for the usual interviews. Then, out of the tunnel, LeBron appeared, calm, unbothered, wearing a tailored black jacket with "Still Standing" stitched on the back in clean white letters. Barkley looked up from his notes and froze. The crowd erupted. Not because of tension, but because LeBron wasn't avoiding anything. He walked directly to the desk, dapped Shaq, nodded to Ernie, made eye contact with Kenny. Then his eyes met Barkley's. They shook hands. The camera didn't cut. Shaq, smirking, leaned into his mic. Well, look who ain't ducking nobody. The crowd laughed nervously. Ernie tried to pivot. So LeBron, tell us what the energy feels like tonight. LeBron smiled, but looked right at Barkley. It feels like accountability's in the room. Shaq bit his lip to keep from howling. Ernie blinked. Kenny chuckled into his fist, and Barkley nodded. He didn't fight it. He didn't throw another jab. He reached for the mic, and for the first time in the saga, his voice softened. Look, I said some things I probably shouldn't have, Barkley admitted. It came from a place that's old school. I thought I was critiquing the game, but maybe I crossed into critiquing the man. That wasn't fair. The arena held its breath. LeBron nodded once. I appreciate that, he said. We don't always have to agree, but we damn sure better know where the line is. And with that, he walked off. The mic was still warm in Barkley's hand. Later that night, Stephen A. posted a single sentence. Now that's how you own a room. The footage went viral. Again, not because it was explosive, but because it was. Rare growth, grace. And a grown man refusing to be dragged down just to win a soundbite. Barkley's team released no statement. They didn't have to. The look on his face said everything. And LeBron, he didn't gloat. He didn't tweet. He just posted a photo of that handshake with one caption, "Never louder than my legacy." The documentary deal didn't make headlines right away. It started quietly through a call, not a press release. A respected producer reached out to LeBron's team with a simple pitch. Let's tell the story of the power behind restraint. At first, they weren't sure if he'd say yes. LeBron had turned down offers before accusaries, dramatic reenactments, shallow exposes pretending to be legacy pieces. But this time, something landed. This wasn't about gossip, it was about impact. So he agreed. But with conditions. He wouldn't sit down just to talk about the feud with Barkley. If they were going to do this, it had to be bigger. About image. About leadership. About what it meant to carry the weight of greatness while being judged for the tone you used to lift it. The working title, Unshaken. They started filming within months. Interviews weren't just with teammates or coaches, but with young athletes, journalists, educators, even critics. The question was the same. What happens when greatness refuses to shrink? Barkley wasn't interviewed. He declined. But his shadow loomed over the entire story, not as a villain, but as a mirror. A generation's voice, finally being examined, not just echoed. Stephen A. narrated part of the voiceover. His opening line cut deep. We love strength in sports. We just forget how it sounds when it doesn't ask for permission. When the first trailer dropped, it didn't show dunks or trophies, it showed silence. LeBron, sitting alone in an empty gym, staring into the rafters. A voice his own said, I learned early. Not every shot is worth taking, but some silences are. That moment, 10 seconds long, shut down social media. Athletes reposted it. Fans called it the most LeBron thing ever. No screaming. No drama. Just truth. Spoken like a man who knew the weight of every word before he said it. When the full doc aired, it didn't end with a confrontation. It ended with a question spoken by LeBron during the final frame when they call you too loud. Ask yourself who's benefiting from your silence. Fade to black. Legacy. Cemented. And somewhere, years later. Charles Barkley watched the credits roll from his living room. He nodded, no bitterness, no denial. Just respect. Then he mumbled to himself, damn, he really didn't miss. Months passed after Unshaken aired, and its ripple didn't fade, it deepened. The documentary became more than a sports film. It was screened in college classrooms, quoted in business lectures, shared by civil rights organizations and coaches alike. People weren't talking about basketball anymore. They were talking about tone. About how control, quiet, measured, tensional control was being redefined by a man the world once mocked for leaving Cleveland. Then for returning, then for speaking out, then for speaking too softly. And now. Now they were listening at a sports leadership summit in Chicago. A college athlete stood up during a Q&A and said, LeBron taught us how to win without yelling. That changed my game and how I lead my team. The moderator nodded and replied, that's what legacy sounds like. It's not just what you do, it's what people do after hearing you. Back in LA, LeBron stayed moving, training, coaching. His son, building schools, working on the next project without ever mentioning the last one, until one night during a casual podcast appearance. He was asked, do you think Barkley ever really understood where you were coming from? LeBron smiled slowly. I think he understood before he said it, he replied. But understanding doesn't always beat instinct. Sometimes ego talks first. But look, we all got ego. The difference is I learned how to pause mine. He leaned forward. That's the lesson. Not about me. It's not about Chuck. It's about what happens when a mic's in front of you and the whole world's watching. What are you really saying about them or about you? The host paused. You ever talked to him since? LeBron chuckled. No need. We already said what we needed to say. What's the last time he mentioned Barkley on record? Not out of avoidance, out of peace. Because when a man knows what he stands for, he doesn't need to replay the moment. He just keeps walking through it.